Hello, Malar. How are you?
I am very good indeed. Thank you, Ashok. How are you today?
I am fine, and as you notice, I'm not in KL now. I'm back in Singapore.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out whether you looked better when you were in KL, but I will assume you looked better in KL. But anyway, thank you for co-hosting today. It's nice to be with you again. And how's your week been?
Wow, geez, it's Thursday already. It's been interesting. It's been learning as usual, which I enjoy. So I got no complaints with that. Right. And for all who are wondering, what's this show about and what are these two people talking, chatting away? Well, welcome to the Leadership in Flow Asia Season 3. We've been doing this since 2022, where we speak to quiet leaders in Asia to try and find out what are the things they do from a growth point of view, whether at the personal level, leadership level, or a business growth level. And today we've got someone interesting, isn't it, Malar?
Every
You,
week we have someone interesting,
that's
but
very true. That's very true.
every week we have someone interesting. But I have special feelings for what our guest today, lah, huh?
Tell us when you met her or how did you meet her?
I think more than when I met her at a park when I was taking a walk and I was introduced to her. And after that, I've had the privilege of working with her, in our learning and development programs, right? But I think
Wow.
most importantly, it warms my heart to have a senior manager who also happens to be a very graceful young lady, right?
Hmm.
Who's wise, who's warm, who's kind, who's compassionate, yet very fiery about her leadership role, right? Because I mean, I think like everybody else would know that we take a lot of pride bringing in practitioners, people whom
Mm-hmm.
we've had the privilege to witness how they make change happen. So today we have Carmen Loh from Accenture, of course, and she's a senior manager in Accenture's strategy practice. So can you imagine, right? Um, a senior leader who has to think big, but here is a leader who does not only think big, but she always checks in with her heart to make sure she does what is right with people. So, we're very, very happy, privileged to have Carmen Loh talking to us about leading change agents for sustainability. Let's bring her on quickly.
All right, let's bring her on and let's go for a walk in the park with her.
Hi guys, how are you?
Hi, come on, how are you? You actually met her in a park first, yeah? Walking, yeah?
I did. It was a beautiful Sunday morning, and I think sometimes you have to think about it, right? Like you don't meet people by accident.
Hmm.
Sometimes
Oh,
maybe it was some kind of intervention that brought us together. We had a mutual friend, but I think even as I was talking to Malar and like kind of like resonating with her energy, I was like, we had a long conversation, Mala, for two strangers who bumped into each other when we were supposed to be doing loops around the park, right? So I'm glad circumstances kind of brought us together for a second time through your work with the firm and helping and you helping also to drive change and impact to leaders within our organization. So very nice to be here.
oh,
Nice, nice. All right.
And
Thank
happy
you very
4th
much.
of July, by the way.
oh, yarn. Independent.
Fireworks everywhere and hot dogs.
Didn't even think about it. Nice.
Mm.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm going to shoot off the first question only because since Malar, you know her from the park, I have no idea which park and whatsoever. And you mentioned an Accenture and the kind of work that she do. Come on, help us understand your role.
Okay, sure. So I think Marla might have mentioned that I am a senior manager in
Mhm.
Accenture's sustainable strategy practice, right? So the strategy practice does a lot of regional works with our clients in Southeast Asia. We look to drive change from, almost like the C or C-1 sort of level, right? Really looking at how we can influence the direction that firms are taking. If I go a
Hmm.
little bit more specific to the role that I play in the organization, I am part of a smaller team that is focused on the topic of sustainability. Think about us as a catalyst for change,
Okay.
right? Sustainability is a topic that, I think you hear on other podcasts, you read about it a lot, and people talk about it. But in a lot of organizations, even within ours, we understand its primacy in what we do from day to day. But we still pull together a small team to kind of see that change throughout the organization. So I look at it more from the perspective of our clients in what we call the resources industry. Resources means your oil and gas, utilities, and chemicals companies
Mhm.
here in Southeast Asia. So that kind of centers it a little bit for you, hopefully.
Okay, okay. So what I'm hearing from you is, yes, you specialize in the resources industry, and
Yep.
for clients, what you do is you are in the strategy practice where you're trying to drive change, right? And
Yes.
within the organization itself, you have a team that looks into sustainability practices. Would that be right so
Correct.
far? Okay,
Yes.
okay. So I hear a lot about sustainability.
Mm.
Um, and I guess I don't want to make the mistake, so I would rather help you to define what is sustainability, and then
Okay.
we go deep dive into that.
Yeah. Sure. So maybe the textbook answer, and because you will hear a lot about this as well, right? So the UN is one of those agencies that's driving a lot of the
Mm,
sustainability conversations at the global level, right? You've heard about the Sustainable Development Goals. You've probably seen a lot of the diagrams with all the different, kind of boxes that talk about the
mm,
17 different areas that they're
mm,
focused
mm.
on. So how they define sustainability is a way to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, right?
Okay.
That's the kind of longer way of saying it. I mean, there are a lot of developing countries around the world, our own country included, right, that are dealing with the threat of what climate change will bring, right? But I think we really need to strike that balance to ensure that while we need to continue to develop for the sake of our people, right, and to
Mhm.
push towards progress, we are trying to minimize the impact of climate change as well, right, to kind of make sure that we're here to stay, as it were, for future generations.
Nice,
Okay.
nice. And
Yeah.
in
Sorry.
fact, I liked the summary. Sorry, Ashok. I
No worries.
liked the way you said it. So we're basically saying, don't take, for today's need, don't take it from the future or from
Don't
tomorrow.
take it for granted, and yes, essentially, because I think we are very much sort of like guardians of what is to come, right, for them. So whatever we do now has an impact to what our children and our grandchildren will face. So that's why we're, also dealing with some tough decisions when it comes to what we do, right, in our day to day.
Nice, nice, nice. And while we're talking about sustainability, we have a couple of people who've joined us. Thank you for joining us. Those who are at the background quietly on LinkedIn, thanks for joining us. I'm just going to say hello to a few people who've said hello to us. Hi, James. Thank you for joining us from Penang. For some reason, I'm not able to show your comment. And Major Prabhakaran has joined us. Hi, Major. Thank you for joining us. Ashraf, thank you for joining us once again. And of course, Kirtana is here to make sure she says hello. Now, while we say hello to everybody, Kaman, thank you very much for giving us a very clear idea of how we are all challenged to be to do the best in our businesses, but let's also be very focused that we don't take it from our future generation. Yeah. So Ashok, I'll pass it back to you because I just loved her definition. So it's so clear for me. You want something now. Remember, whatever you're doing now, make sure you don't take it from the future generation. Thank you, Kal.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, so what you're saying is meet the present needs without compromising the future as much as possible. That's what we are focusing on from a sustainability point of view. Okay, and I know you started off by saying, we've got a textbook answer.
Mm.
So I want to get out of the textbook.
Okay.
So
Okay.
because there is what you're alluding to is the environment aspects of
Mm.
sustainability. I
Yeah.
get that. I get that.
Mm.
But there's also the business aspects of sustainability, isn't
Mm.
it?
Yes,
Right.
definitely,
So,
very much so.
how do we marry both? How do we marry both?
Sure, sure. I think this is really why it has to kind of all come together so that folks understand why this is something that they need to pursue, and it's not so much of a compliance check for a lot of people, right? I think when I speak about sustainability to businesses, the first thing that is triggered to them is ESG, right?
Uh,
Environmental, social, and governance impact.
hmm,
That's also because regulations are being put in place in almost all our countries in Southeast Asia for large corporations to start reporting their ESG compliance. It's also because if you think back to what happened, I think in 2015, we had the Paris Agreement, to which a large number of countries, I think it was 140 countries, were all signatory to, right, to make their own individual commitments to reducing carbon emissions. And doing the ESG reporting is one way to start to monitor our progress towards this. But compliance always becomes a bit of a stick, right? And Mala, we've had conversations about motivations and how you drive people, and the stick is only one side of the conversation, right? What is the carrot really for companies? And I try to encourage our clients to look at it not just from a compliance point of view, but while you are doing that compliance, how else can you unlock value for yourself and for your company? So, value can be in terms of generating more insights, Ashok, from the data that you're gathering to comply, right?
mhm,
And I did use that also to identify probably initiatives that you can start to put in place. One, to improve your metrics, right, from an ESG perspective, but
mhm.
also to see how that helps you improve your business operations. I'll give an example.
Yes, please.
Um, yeah, I think one of the biggest like kind of contributions to businesses is their energy needs, right? And a lot of us in developing countries are still using coal as a major source of generation, right? So while our utility companies are trying to look at how we transition to renewables, what about us as companies thinking, how can we actually be more efficient in the use of energy? If you think about it, all the energy that's coming to us from the transmission lines that you see kind of running throughout our
Mhm,
industrial areas to our homes, there's also a lot of kind of loss, right, through all these different processes. So if we look to see how we can be more efficient in how we use our energy, how do we conserve that?
mhm,
There's an element here towards seeing how you can then reduce the cost, how much energy you're using, and therefore how much you're paying from, right?
mhm,
From an example, and that hits your bottom line because you're being more efficient as a company. Another example could be, well, thinking about the fleet of vehicles that you're operating, right? If we can look to see how we can optimize the routes of your fleet, right? So that you travel shorter distances, for example, or you make fewer stops. Not only will your trucks and your cars be releasing less CO2, but you'll be paying less for petrol, right?
mhm.
Overall. So again, seeing how we shift the conversation more to the value that principles around sustainability can unlock. You can even take it a step further, and we do work with some clients who are looking to develop new businesses
Mm,
around sustainability related areas, right? Looking at the demand uh, from the population, whether it is looking at selling solar PVs, right, that people
mm,
install on top of their houses, whether it is around putting in place your EV charging ecosystem. So people are also looking at, maybe I shouldn't say people, companies are also looking for ways to pivot their offerings, right? Some of them are even releasing um, new products that are greener, right? Because they are using the inputs themselves are being decarbonized. So you can start to see folks shifting their offerings because there is demand for such services. Of course, that comes with a price, and that's something that we're hoping that with the right regulations in place and gathering the right traction from the kind of broader consumer market, that's something that we kind of move in a step change in the future.
Right. Okay. So, thanks for that. Because for me, before you explain all of this, right, I think I was in the same camp as most people who would have thought sustainability equals ESG. So therefore, it's a flavor of the period, or I got to look good, I got to say the right things. But here, I think what you've done is you have nailed it when you said it's about value creation.
Yep.
Unlock the value in that sense. And the examples you gave, yes, how can we look at reducing carbon emissions at the same time being efficient in the way you manage your fuel,
Mm.
for example? And
Yep.
therefore, how does that then relate to your bottom lines?
Yes.
Of course, as a
Yeah.
business, that's what we are looking at as a business owner,
Correct.
right?
Right.
It is going to be about the P&L.
Mhm.
And I think you hit it and explained it quite well, very well actually, where ESG is just one reporting mechanism
Mm.
that may be required because everybody has signed a paper. That's fine. That's
Yes.
fine and good. That's
Mm.
fine. We're not going to argue that. But how do we now practice what we need to do by unlocking the value, right?
Correct.
Not only for the bottom line, but also for a bigger purpose in that sense.
Mm.
Okay, Muller is itching to ask a question, so I'm going to step aside.
Ashok says this because he doesn't know what else to say now, I think.
Are you sure? I've got a whole list of other questions. But I shall leave it to
No,
you,
no.
Muller.
No, actually, when Carmen spoke, thank you for the nice summary, Ashok. What struck me is that I think, like what you said, sometimes compliance can help us focus on the right thing.
Mm.
Because if ESG and SDG goal, if you don't have to comply to that, we won't ask because compliance is tough, right? It's painful.
Yes.
We begin
Mm.
to push back by asking why,
Yeah.
right? And the why is a powerful why because it then helps us to be mindful. So I
Mm.
think what sustainability does for us, especially it started off with ESG in terms of
Mm.
how it was popularized, right? I think
Yeah.
what it helps us to do is that it helps us to be mindful, to stay on track why we do what we do,
Yeah.
because I think often we look at getting the results and
Mm.
growth of business, but we don't look at how we might be stealing from the future.
Mm.
Which
Yeah.
means that whatever looks good today, right,
Mm.
may not be present or available tomorrow, right? And
Correct.
which is a big thing, right? Because when we think about businesses, right, the whole idea of actually businesses is really, I mean, which business is started because we want to fly by night business, right? We all
Mhm.
want to be there to make a difference
Mm.
and be there to serve the future generation. So
Yeah.
thank you for making it so simple by saying, yeah, you might think we might be complying, but can we now add value? Because if something is being put as compliance, there must be a very, very good reason. Now, as I say that,
Mm.
Major Prabhakaran says he loves this. He says
Oh.
ESG make perfect business sense. Thanks a lot, Carmen. He also said, very nice, don't rob future generations' right to have a
Yeah.
decent and safe environment. Right.
Mm.
Now, Carmen, I'm very curious, right? Now, I know you personally, and
Mm.
I know you're very passionate, right? But I'm very interested to find out from you, right? Did you become passionate about sustainability because of your role?
Um. So that's an interesting question, actually, you're putting out there for me, right, Malar? I think yes, of course, being kind of tasked with this role has meant that I've gone a lot deeper into the areas of sustainability. But thinking about it, to a certain extent, my involvement in this has actually started right from the beginning of my career when I kind of look back. Um, my very first role was in a private equity firm, that was looking to do infrastructure investments, right?
Mhm.
And again, that comes from a place where 15, 20 years ago, to what I was sharing with Ashok, we were looking at unlocking development and improving the quality of life for a lot of the folks, right?
Mm.
Whether it's about providing um, power by financing power plants, right? Putting in place financing toll roads, right? So that there is connectivity, telco tower infrastructure, so that we all can kind of pick up our phones. And 4G is something that we all kind of take for granted now, right? But this is something that we had to put the infrastructure in place all those years ago, to financing hospitals, so that we're also providing healthcare, right? So that kind of developmental role and that whole push towards creating a better future for people has always been there since the start.
Mm.
Uh, but I think karma has come full circle to me, because I mentioned first off that one of the areas that we also invested in were power plants, right? And at that point, a lot of them were actually powered by coal, right? Because that was the cheapest way to provide energy, right, to countries where there was insufficient power that went to homes, that went to industries, that went to businesses, right? So I guess in a way it's nice to have come full circle and look now also at um, renewable energy projects, solar, wind, EVs, right? Maybe I'm paying my debt to the environment when it comes around. Yeah.
Would you remember? Because I think what's interesting is that, I mean, again, right?
Mm,
It might be unfair to the listeners, but I think I've experienced you as a person who's very reflective. You
mm,
reflect a lot, and the fact that you look at it as karma, right? And
mm,
well, I look at it as just low awareness, or we were focused on something else, right,
mm,
at some point.
mm,
But I think the good thing about you is that you're saying, okay, I know how we got the results in the past, and I
mm.
maybe wasn't thinking about the impact in the future, right?
Yeah.
And you're now put in a role that probably forced you to look at the impact,
Yeah, definitely.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
But I think there are two types of leaders: people who
mhm,
internalize and ask the why and find the purpose, which is why today's topic is leading change agents, right? Because
mm,
uh, if you believe in it, if you are, if you have conviction, then the way you will influence people will be very, very different. So, at
mm.
what point do you remember when you started the role, right?
Yeah.
There might be awareness, lurking away, but at
Mm.
which point where you felt strongly connected that this is part of your purpose as a leader?
To be honest, I think it took me a bit of time to kind of come to terms with it. I think when the role was, kind of first discussed, I was initially a bit scared, right? Because, you know, as we spoke about with Ashok also at the beginning, what does sustainability mean? What are the boundaries? What am I actually supposed to do, right,
Mm,
in this entire scope? And I think it's also taken me a bit of time to kind of define it for myself and understand what kind of impact that I, as a person, can drive as an employee, but also then what my people can do, right? And what are their own kind of unique contributions towards that. We have of course, within our company, we have very clear segregations around what are the themes that we look to drive around sustainability, whether it's about creating new business models, looking at the value chain and the impact that kind of drives there, looking at our data decision making, etc. But I think also, it's something that we have to collectively come together and define for ourselves, right? What are the boundaries towards what we can do? I think it probably took me a few months, Mahler, to be honest, to wrap my head around it, as it were, right? But I think what I've come to realize is the small team that I spoke about. Like I said, I use the term catalyst because it is really the responsibility of everyone in my organization to understand sustainability and to start to embed this in everything that we do for our clients, right? Because we want all of them to do this as well, right? Not everything is a clear, sustainable project, right? Like reducing CO2 emissions, but even down to how we run the projects. Can we run them more sustainably? Can we reduce the cost of travel, for example, right? To reduce the carbon footprint of the project. These are principles that we actually try to put in place as we are delivering, right? So it's something that needs to resonate throughout everyone in my company.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. So I don't think you do anything for the sake of doing. You take it on. So what I'm
Mm,
hearing from you is that, when something is thrown at you, you take it on, you internalize it, and you find your
mm,
why. And after
yeah.
you find your why, then you're able to then influence the people
Mm,
you are leading in your team to know why this is an important agenda,
mm,
us as
yes.
people,
Yes.
right? And by the way, as a bigger part, which is the business. Okay, sure.
And I think one of the things also, Mala, which is interesting, is the number of people who come up to me expressing an interest, right, and trying to see how they can come on board,
Mm,
um, which is the kind of biggest reward, I think, in a lot of this, right? Because I think in very few organizations everywhere do you see this amount of proactiveness. And I think
mm,
it's really because sustainability for some of the employees are it's really like a personal passion, right? So the ask is really to go to a leader to say, hey, this is something I'm willing to do. I think it's important. I'm willing to see how I can put, for some of them, I'm willing to see how I can put a bit of extra time in to see how I can impact this, right? Both within the firm and at clients, right? And then we start off from there, right? To try to identify, okay, within your current role within the organization, how can we best get you to contribute, right?
mm,
And still be recognized for this,
mm.
which I think is something that's also, I mean, I love them because I know that they're doing this, out of the goodness of their hearts. But I think, if you take time to do something like this, we also need to make sure that their impact is also felt, right? And measured to a certain extent.
Yeah, but what I'm getting out of the story that you're sharing is this, right? When you, when a leader, right, internalizes the purpose, the why,
Mm-hmm.
right? In this case, the why of sustainability, your conviction in influencing people awakens them to
I
want to
think so.
contribute, right? So what you are doing, like what you said, karma, right? So it's not that there was no space for people to become aware because we were focused elsewhere. But when you
Mm-hmm.
have a leader who's purpose driven
Mm.
and who communicates that purpose, what you do is you give me an opportunity to be awakened.
Yeah.
I'm now aware, and when I become aware, I become aware of what is important for me, because now
Mm.
I realize that, hey, this agenda is also important for me personally, not
Yes.
because it's compliance, but because I know that living the world a better place for
Mm.
the future is important for me. Now,
Yeah.
this is where I'm going to walk the extra mile, because now I'm not even doing it because it's compliant. I'm not even doing it because it's not even a part of my job. But
Yes.
right, I'm doing this because I think this is the right thing to do.
Mm.
And I think
Mm.
that already speaks volumes of the importance of influence, right? So when we talk about leading, right, a lot of
Mm.
times when we talk about leading change or influencing change, we
Mm.
think that we need to speak to people, we need to convince people,
Yeah.
all right? But most good things, people
Mm.
are driven by a better world, driven by a positive purpose. I mean, purpose is always
Mm.
positive, right? And I think what you are telling me is that when you believe as a leader, when you speak, when you walk your talk, when you share your
Mm.
struggles,
Mm.
people buy into the same dream, same mission, and same vision. That's what I'm hearing.
I think that's a fair point to make, Mother. And I'm also just reminded of the fact that, look, you are not a leader if no one wants to follow you. you don't step up on the podium one day and declare this for yourself, right? It is when people feel your conviction and are aligned with your values,
Nice.
and this happens at any level, then you actually truly become a leader.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you've exhibited. Before I pass it on to Ashok, I have to read this comment from Major. Malar and Ashok, after this show,
Gardening.
you must start gardening because we're talking about environment. Major is very passionate about gardening, and he draws deep insights from the environment, from the earth.
Right.
Major, just to let you know, you're assuming I don't garden. Don't make that assumption, but yeah, Ashok and I will start a garden together after this. We need to buy a plot first. Okay, moving on.
Thank you very much for the gardening advice. Okay, so Carmen, I'm going to move from. We spoke about compliance,
Yeah.
and earlier on in your conversations with Malar, I'm hearing about commitment. So I'm going to move from compliance to commitment, and you use a very important word in between that is the spark of it, the catalyst, right?
Mm.
So you're the catalyst to drive commitment, right?
Yeah.
So I've got a question, and since Malar brought up about purpose, I've got a question about around purpose. But I'm going to divide it into two parts to it. One is for your team, and one is for your clients, right?
Okay.
Now your team comes in, right, and you're trying to align them to that shared common purpose, a sustainability purpose. So yes, they come in with a bleeding heart. They are behind you. They see you as a Carmen, as a leader who have awakened me. But how do you help them practice, pun intended, or just in a sustainable manner? Because it's a long run. It's not. It's just not a short Coca-Cola fizz motivation. It's a
Yeah.
long run. So how do you help them remain committed when sometimes the whole world is outside is saying, this is BS, blah blah blah. But how do you help them keep the momentum, the energy going, right? After aligning them towards the sustainability purpose. That's the first part of the question. Let's tackle that.
Okay. And so this is always a tricky one because the people I work with actually come from all different teams and divisions. Sometimes when they put their hand up, right, to do this within Accenture. Accenture has almost 10,000 people just here in Malaysia alone, right? So you can imagine how many how many people and how many different divisions and teams we are comprised of. So that's motivation is something that I think is very important to sustain. I think really it all comes down to engagement, Ashok, right? There's a few things that we need to do here, right? Because we do a lot of conversations, learnings, etc., around the topic of sustainability. And I think that's important because it allows everybody to speak with a common language about what we do, right? It also clarifies, Ashok, what you kind of call out at the beginning, where people have different interpretations of what sustainability means. So we align this from an organization perspective. I think the second one is around communities that we
Communities.
build, right? And for example, I need to do a call out here to the sustainability squad team, right? That we have here in Accenture. We have spokes of this in all our different countries that we operate in, right? And we also do a bit of cross pollination. So we do regular catch ups. There are mailers. There are games where we all kind of get together as a team, right? People who are passionate about this. And then from community, I also, where possible, try to make this real for them by bringing them through from the communities where there's a bit more outreach to projects where they can contribute, right? Because these guys have clearly expressed an interest. And if I know where their current role resides, I can still then explore how do we include them into projects that we are delivering for the client so that they really start to see the value and tangible contribution that they can make towards change, right? So really it is always a tricky thing to understand what each person kind of brings to that table. But I think as a leader, it is valuable to spend that time understanding your team, right? So that you can use them. And I say this in the best possible manner, right? So that you can use them to their advantage. Because I think if you are able to utilize people when they're at their best, that's really when they start to shine, right? And everybody brings something different to the table.
Right, right. So what I'm hearing from you is how do you help them keep the energy and the momentum going? I boiled it down to three C's that you talked about. One
Mm,
is the communication, the
mm,
engagement that you always have.
yeah,
You also focus on the education part of things, right? The
yep,
languaging, right? In that
mm,
sense. The other
mm,
one is the communities that you build, the
mhm,
squads that you have, so that
yep,
they become the catalysts for you, your change
mhm,
agents. And the
yep,
third one is all around contribution, where
yes,
you want to make sure that they, yes, I have a purpose, but
mhm,
it's nothing like when I see that purpose making an impact with the contribution. That's a link to meaningful
mhm,
work. So I have a
yes.
purpose, but you ensure that the contribution makes an impact to meaningful work. So that's one that you
That's a
do.
beautiful summary. Thank you, Ashok. I'm going to use that when I have my next conversations with my team.
No worries. You help
Mm.
me. You are helping me learn. I'm very happy to be learning from you. Please use whatever you need to. Okay, so now you got that within the team.
Mm,
Fantastic.
right.
Now you're taking this to the clients of yours,
Mm,
all right? So the clients here, that's a different ball game because you have to pitch to them why they need to have sustainability in the first place. And
mm,
and like you said earlier, you speak to the C levels or C minus.
mm. Yeah.
How do you then align their goals towards a common shared purpose, sustainable purpose? How do you do that? I'm assuming it's a tougher
Mm,
pitch,
mhm.
right? So how do you
Yeah.
do that and how do you keep maintaining that? So let's divide it into two parts. How do you do it and how do you maintain it?
There's not really a secret sauce. I wish I could say there was just one key, Ashok, that I go in and I just unlock, right? But I think with some clients, in a way, regulations give you an opening to go in and
Ah,
start to have
okay.
that discussion,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because to the compliance point, yes, if you don't start with the compliance, it would be a nice to have top page which gets put into the pages of your CSR report, right? And of course that still brings impact, but I think that doesn't bring impact on a broad scale throughout the organization. So I think that usually gives us a way to start having conversations. But I think there's also a lot of friction when it comes to this compliance, right? And what we do is we try to go in and reduce that friction when
Mm.
it comes to reporting. I mean, we are a technology company, so we have the platform capabilities. We bring in data and AI to help make the job of our clients easier when it comes to compliance. And then we use the available data to start to identify, okay, how can you bring value to your organization from addressing these sustainability issues, right? There are different levers that
Mm.
you can pull as a company, and I think it's our job as consultants to kind of shine a light on that,
Nice.
right? To help them understand where else they might make improvements.
Mm.
Sometimes some of our clients might already have a sustainability team in
Ah,
place, right?
okay.
And so if they have, that's great. We also sometimes try to help them to identify what are the roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities that the sustainability organization has to make.
Mm.
But again, like how it is within my own organization, right? You can't expect 10 people in one department to make an impact on 10,000 people. um, Really then it's about defining the interactions between that team and the organization as a whole, right? There are certain areas that are accountable from a sustainability perspective there, but
Mm.
you cannot do it without, for example, having the folks from finance involved, right? The folks from HSC involved, the folks from
Mm.
asset management, from operations, involved. So really, once you start to unpack it at that level, you see that it's actually the responsibility of almost everyone in the organization to play a role and to contribute.
Okay, so it's a bit of a long game from what I'm hearing,
It
right?
is.
But the way you go in is okay. So there's regulation.
Mm,
Let me use that as a stepping stone to go in.
yeah.
But there's a lot of friction that they are facing. They're frustrated with it. So you
Mm,
go in there, right, to solve problems with
yes.
the data that you have. So you go in from let me try and solve your problem. At the same
Mm-hmm.
point of time, let me educate you about how I can help you create the value
Yep.
in a sustainable manner with the right practices and attitudes.
Mm,
And where they are a sustainable team, it's easy for you to leverage because now you can share whatever is happening back in your organization, the
mm-hmm.
best practices
Mm-hmm.
there. You can cross
Mm,
pollinate, you can even bring them into your
yes.
squad and or create squads in the other side. That's fantastic. But where
Mm.
you don't have, then then how do you do that? Where you don't have a squad within that team, how do you, what are the milestones you create? How do you ensure that you keep them progressively motivated in that journey?
Mm, mm. I think then it's about looking at this team by team. It's the same thing like what you do with people, right? You have to understand what each team or department's I have to say it, KPIs
Oh,
are, right? They drive a lot of things, right, in organizations, right?
mm,
But I think we need to start to look at that so that we can understand,
mm,
right, what they need to be held accountable for, and to see how sustainability can be embedded as part of what they do. So again, then it's maybe a question of not putting an additional requirement on it,
yeah,
but to see how this is something that makes sense in their day to day, right?
yeah,
Because if you don't do this,
mm,
um, again, the friction sometimes become a bit
yeah.
insurmountable.
I noticed you were struggling with the word KPI, which I understand because
Yeah.
the last thing what you want is you don't want to go the compliance way again, is it?
Mm.
Because we
Yes.
wanted to embrace these practices so that they are
Mm.
committed to it,
Yeah.
and even at best if they can become advocates for it or even
Yes.
catalysts, right,
Yes.
or be the
There
change
is a bit
agent
of
for you.
culture change, Ashok,
Ah,
that can be done, right?
okay.
And really, if you want to do that culture change, then that has to come at the leadership level, right? It's almost someone that where you need an executive sponsor, whether it's a CEO or somebody at that level to drive that throughout the organization, right?
Okay.
And then it's not even about what do we do in our business, right? But is this something that we kind of internalize and do um, in our day to day? I have a client, for example, when I go into a meeting with them, they always have water in reusable bottles, right? So
Okay.
they've cut out plastics completely to the point where I'm already afraid to bring my Starbucks cup inside there, right? So again, I mean, I think sometimes when you start to drive culture change, that's really where you set up a company to internalize sustainability for the long term.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is where it is, yes, as much as you are not a big fan of using KPI, but
Mhm.
that could be a tool that you might lean towards, but it
Mhm.
is all about how you drive the culture change, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so Malar, I know she's, when it comes to culture, she's waiting to just jump in
Mm.
and leadership.
No,
Okay,
I like the way you assume a lot of things about me, Ashwin. We'll talk about it later. Actually, what caught my attention, Carmen, is that when you said regulation is a good start, and
Mm.
because I think when it comes to what doesn't get measured doesn't get done, what gets measured gets
Mm.
done.
Yeah.
So why do we have measurements? Measurements uh, are actually tools for us to stay focused on what's important, so
Yeah.
that we can measure the impact,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I
Yeah.
think when it comes to sustainability, right, the reason we have, a lot of us have got started because it's a regulatory thing, is
Mm.
because we were focused on other things there. I think in running our lives, forget about business, right? There are
Mm.
just now so many important factors.
Yeah.
right? And
Mm.
everything seems important in one particular way when we are focused on business sustainability and business growth,
Yes.
right? And while you're thinking about how to grow and look good today,
Mm.
serve the serve your customers today,
Mm-hmm.
minimize costs today, it is not difficult to forget about the implication of your choices.
Mm.
So I think it is a real practical problem.
Yeah.
While it can look desirable to say, I want to leave the world a better place, but first I need to survive today's world before I can leave the world a better. I mean, let's be real about it. I think businesses are pushed, people are pushed, and leaders are very pushed with so many priorities. So I think I loved what you said about regulations being a good start,
Mm.
because authorities realize that, if I don't set it, we're not going to set it as a priority, not because it's
Mm-hmm.
not important, because there are just so many priorities to manage. Number one. Number
Yeah.
two, I know you were stumbling with the word KPI, right? I don't know what the stumble means. I think none of us actually like the word KPI, but it helps us focus.
Yeah.
But I think what you've reiterated over and over again is that we may start with the end in mind, which is the KPI,
Mm-hmm.
but the beginning is actually the purpose. So, in fact, just now when you were taking through your three C's, what I actually saw is that, if you look at sustainability, the purpose of sustainability, I
Mm.
think you draw meaning into why as a
Yeah.
person who's
Mm.
managing it, right? And
Mm.
I thought, you know, you as a leader, you have taken it as your personal identity
Mm-hmm.
to make a difference, right?
Yeah.
And you take it as your personal commitment to do it. Now, as
Mm.
a result, what you're doing is that when people see you so passionate and so aligned and congruent to what
Mm.
you're talking about, they are
Yeah.
drawn to you because you've now got them to think and feel and acknowledge that they want the same thing that you want,
Mm.
which
Mm.
is where actually culture sits,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I
What
think there's an
you've
element. Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think what you've shown us without directly telling us is that
Mm.
if you want sustainability to be a culture, now what is a
Mm.
culture? It's a way a group behaves, right?
Mm.
But
Mm.
and I think the way you were struggling maybe with KPI is that you want people to behave not out of compliance but out of commitment.
Yes.
And for that, people
Mm.
need to buy into the meaning and purpose and how it actually makes a difference, right? Which
Yeah.
is what you're doing. Yeah, you're going to say something about culture. Go ahead.
No, I think the point is this, right? I mean, we talk a lot about being authentic as a leader,
Mm,
right? But I realized that this is one of those things where it kind of really has sunk in over the
mm,
last year, where I think everything you do, from what you do in the workplace to what you do at clients to what you do at home, um, at best it is ideal if this is all congruent, right? Because then your identity and yourself is very aligned to delivering this purpose. And it is not an easy task what we're trying to do within our organization, and what we want to do with our clients, right? But with that congruence comes the energy and the conviction to kind of see it through. And that's how I think I see this, in order to maintain my own kind of sustainability in this space, right? Because this is what I need to keep me going as well, right? When you face hurdles, you face blocks, etc.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, I think again, right, you're reiterating the importance of being together as a person, right?
Yeah.
Having integrity as a leader.
Mm.
When you're leading a particular purpose or a particular outcome, or
Yeah.
setting a culture, what you're basically saying is that, do you really believe in it? Are you authentic about what you say?
Mm-hmm.
And to be authentic, you need to be aligned and congruent within, right? Because that's
Yes.
going to bring about the energy and conviction to other people. And that's what executive presence is all about. Because it's not about knowing what's the right thing to say, but
Mm.
people see you as presence, right? Presence for what you actually believe. And that's greater influence than trying to look right and sound right. I think that's what you're
Mm.
basically saying, right?
Yes.
Have integrity as a leader and be together as a person and be
Mm.
authentic,
Yeah.
and then people will all follow. But the real challenge which you've already brought out is that that's ideal. Sometimes we need a bit of a stick to, I mean, I mean, really, right? Like,
Mm.
if we were not given the discipline of brushing teeth or exercising or doing
Mm.
stuff that we didn't like, that was
Yeah.
like regulatory, right? But eventually, when we begin to try it and feel the difference and feel good about ourselves, we begin to not just buy in, but we
Yeah.
own this thoughts and behaviors. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, because I think whether we're talking about sustainability or anything else, right?
Mm.
How do we bring a group of people to behave in a particular way, which
Mhm.
then aligns them, right? The
Yeah.
culture aligns people towards the strategic goals, and in this case, the strategic goals is actually, how do we, build a sustainable business? Okay,
Mm.
Ashok, I think I've done enough of the summary.
No, Kamal, I really like your authenticity in that sense. I could see you again, right? You're saying, okay, we have to be congruent, but at the same time as you were saying it, I could see that you knew there were times that you dropped the ball also,
Mm.
right?
Right.
How do you pick
Okay.
yourself up then? What do you do to align yourself back again?
I think in I mean, and look, I've had ups and downs in my career, both from professional and personal reasons, right? Um, I think the important thing to do when that happens is two things, right? One is, if you need the time, take the time out for yourself, so that you can kind of refocus. There's another element here, and this was advice that somebody gave me very early on, right? Because the advice was basically that once you make a decision, don't look back.
Right.
The implication, of course, is that you've done the research, you've done the analysis,
Mm.
right? That gives you the comfort that you are making the best decision that you can at this point in time, because circumstances will always change. And I think, you know, um, sometimes if you stop looking back in the rearview mirror and keep wondering what if, that allows you to push harder forward. I hope that helps
Oh,
clarify
definite, definite,
for,
definite,
for
definite.
me.
No, nice, nice. Thank you for that. Because what you're telling me is two things. Number one is, yes, we are humans. You can drop the ball, but take
Mm,
time to reflect on what has happened, learn from that,
yeah,
and make the
yeah.
choice to catapult forward. You
Mm,
know, learn from the past and move forward in that sense. No, thank you very
mm,
much for that, saying that. Okay, so back to the culture pit. I know. Wow,
mm.
we've already spent 55 minutes. Right. So just
So
before,
go for your last question, Ashok.
yeah, last question. All right. So, what can leaders do, right,
Mm.
to create a culture of a sustainability focused culture? What can leaders do, right, to create a sustainability focused culture?
I think you need to live it, right? And live it not from just the perspective of, you know, the emissions or the usage of water, right? I think that one we all see the benefits
Mm.
to that. I think the bigger thing is about how you make your team sustainable. Are you able to provide the support for them so that they can go the long haul? with you, right? And the support, I think that we need to give as leaders is not just from, a learning, coaching, but I think we need to be there for them as people
Wow.
so that they feel safe to come to you, right? With issues that allow them to deliver at their best, right? So there's this aspect I feel of, again, we say psychological safety, right? If you can do that, um, I think you really start to build stronger bonds within your team so that you guys are all driven by a collective passion versus a KPI.
Mother has already said there's nothing wrong with the KPI. But I hear you. But I hear
Yeah.
you. So what you're saying is it is important, yes, to live the culture beyond emissions and water, but most
Mm,
important is focus on the people, right?
yes.
Focus on the people by supporting your teams. Focus on the people by making sure that they operate in a safe environment
Mm, mm,
where they feel they can make the relevant contributions, where they
yeah.
can keep learning, where they can
Mm,
be who they are, authentic,
mm,
where
mm,
they can feel free to challenge and
mm.
yet be themselves.
Yes. And I will tell you then also, Ashok, we can actually conclude with three more letters. We'll give
Yes.
you three P's: people, planet, profit,
Nice.
which
People,
is the same
planet.
framework that we use when we talk about sustainability as well, right? You focus on the people first,
Mhm.
you take care of the people, then you take care of the planet, and then let's hope that the profits take care of themselves.
Nice. Nice. Yes. People, planet,
Planet, profit.
profits. Always look after the people so that they can look after the planet, and therefore it will cascade down to looking after the profits also. Wow,
Yes.
I love that. I love that. And are you heading back to the parks very soon?
I'll,
Just
I'll, I'll see you under the trees, Mala.
just before you leave, Mala, do you have any question? Because if not, I'm going to ask Kamal one more question, unless
No,
you
I
have one.
don't have a question, but I thought, I had to say my piece, right? When you said collective passion versus KPI,
Mm,
what came to my mind was, when we talk about people who are passionate and you talk about collective passion, where people are doing it because they believe it. When people are engaged and people are passionate about doing it for a cause,
yeah.
authenticity comes through, and you give them that safe environment that you're saying is that the reason I think the performance becomes sustainable is that people are not drawing their energy from their future to give it to work today. And sometimes in today's work, that's called
Mm,
well-being, right?
yes.
And I think you've brought in such an important point because we cannot drive tangible sustainability that we are driving
Mm,
without making sure our core resources, our greatest asset, people,
yeah.
we're not able to sustain them. That means we don't steal their future. And the way we do it is really by helping them to bring their heart to work,
Mm,
right? And creating the environment for them so that they feel safe because we all believe that nobody wakes up to not do a good job. So thank you for that. That was my aha moment. And I'm sure Ashok is going to shoot you with one last 1 minute
No, no,
question.
no. I'm fine. I'm fine. That's a very nice summary. No, thank you very much, Kaman, for your time, sharing your views, your thoughts about what sustainability is and what it isn't, and how we all can move from compliance to commitment by helping build the people, the passion within the people, and as a leader, how to show up and be authentic and be true to the cause itself. Right, so that then we focus on the people so that they will look after the planet and it cascades down to the profits. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your time
Thank you
today.
both.
Thank you.
Kaman, thank you once
Okay.
again for saying yes and for enlightening us with your warmth on the screen. Until we meet
You're
you
very
again.
welcome.
Before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with?
No, I think take care of yourselves and take care of each other.
Nice.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
So as we say bye to Kaman, Ashok.
Yes. Wow. Oh,
See?
thank you for bringing her in, and keep walking in the park. Maybe we might find somebody else in the park.
All right, that's fantastic, right? Three P's. I think there was and there are so many ways of working the three P's, right? Pay attention to people, people pay attention to planet,
Planet, and
and profits will happen as a result.
that's right.
Hopefully, fingers
Yeah.
crossed. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So with that, I think that was enlightening session for me.
It was. It was. It was an enlightening session, definitely for me too. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what happens when we get quiet leaders who do all of this quietly, and we are the
Mhm.
lucky ones who meet them in the park and they say yes to us.
Yes.
And for the audience who've been listening quietly, thank you for always supporting us. I must say, I just saw Gerald and Shamini put up a post. Put
Okay.
up a comment. Sorry, we couldn't see it earlier, so we didn't put it up. So all
Mhm.
our quiet supporters, we hope the quiet leaders who've been serving in this platform have been helping you. And if you know great quiet leaders, remember to bring them to us so that we can bring them to you. With that, this is Malar signing off from Malaysia.
And Ashok from Singapore. Thank you very much,
Till
and have a great week ahead.
until we meet you next week. Bye.
Bye bye.